I got my SuperMicro servers in this week. They are the 1U SYS-1029P-WTR. They single U platform. Basically, these ones are dual proc, so we run in Intel 2nd gen scalable processors in them. I actually have gold 6226 processors that'll go in them. As you can see, they come with the standard, all your extra stuff with some additional quick information, installation of CPUs, those kind of things, just a reference guide. And then this thing, which I am going to use, by the way, I've already put together 2 of them, and come to find out I really need this little packet. It's kind of frustrating. Their instructions on their website, the one in the manual, is absolutely terrible and doesn't give you the information you need. And it wasn't until I finally went back and found this in the case that I realized how to actually put the M2 NVMe drive in. Rest of it's just, you know, pretty standard power cables and rack mounting equipment and whatnot. As you can see, these come with the rack mounts in them. I'll pull those out and set them aside. As well as they also come with the heat sinks for the CPUs. They are a 1U passive heat sink. I'll set that aside as well. We'll be using one. This is a pretty simple build. It's for a credit union here in town and next town over, and so we're not using a whole lot of CPU power, but we do need enough cores to have the vCPUs in Hyper-V that we'll need, as well as enough RAM to run some of the security software that their third-party security audit was done by, and determined that they needed all the security software. And I tried talking to them about different options, and they basically want to remain working similarly to the way they are. And so we're going to run that software in-house, which is a little more intensive than their general Active Directory and file server needs. So at this point, I'm going to put the camera down so I can pull this thing out, set it down, and open it up. We have the heatsink. We're only going to be using one of these, as I only have one CPU per node that we're going to be using. So they come with the heatsink. It comes in this nice little package that I can't get open because I'm using both hands for the camera. Excuse me. And then it has the clip for the CPU as well. So here's the clip for the CPU, and you can see it's just a little bracket CPU sits in. Has a little mark on it. That arrow where my ring finger is at, that's where the arrow for the CPU goes. And then if you look on this motherboard, you can see right there in that little corner, that's the other arrow. So we're going to match the arrow on this with the arrow on the CPU, and then the arrow on the motherboard. So we'll go ahead and completely open this thing up. And we'll set that part aside, and we can pull out the heatsink. You can see on the bottom of the heatsink, it's already got the thermal paste, and since I'm going to be doing any kind of crazy wild overclocking or anything, I'm going to go ahead and use that thermal paste. Some of you may desire to take it off and put on something like Arctic Silver or something, and that's fine. I'm not saying I haven't done the same thing in the past, but I think in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and keep it the way it is. Open up my CPU case. This is what my CPU is shipped in. You can see there I got one left. And they're rather large. I mean, not that I have big hands or anything, but I mean, that sucker is pretty good size either way you look at it. So unfortunately, I need both my hands to put the CPU in the clip and attach it to this. So I don't really have a way of recording it. I'm going to see if I can find a way to get this done so I can show you how it goes in. Alright, so here we have it kind of laid out, and just got the gel pack on it. You don't need that. Comes with a nice set of plastic on it, which I absolutely despise, so take that off. And then got another set of plastic on the body back here. Alright, so now that that's cleaned off, go ahead and open this thing up. Just got a single quick screw on the back, and then I have to set the phone down as I can't grab this without doing so. Alrighty. Okay, so pretty simple design. Nothing overly special about it or complicated about it. Even the flimsy little fan shrouds aren't very special. This is CPU 1. That's where we'll be putting the proc after I check for bent pins. And then additionally, we'll be moving these blanks and replacing them with the working fans. There's no reason to have these fans over here, but I have them going over the RAM and heat sink. And then we'll be putting in the NVMe drive, and I will explain that when we get to that point. But it goes back here. You can see the NVMe port over there. I'm trying to point to it, but it doesn't pick up on the camera as well as I thought it would. And then finally, I'll be putting some SSDs in it for storage. So let me get out the CPU and we'll get going with putting this thing together. Alright, so I got some record me, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and mount the CPU in the bracket. Once again, we got the arrow, and I'll show you on the CPU. There's the arrow right there. It's tiny, so it's kind of a pain to see. I'm going to flip the CPU over and just clip it in the bracket. Careful, obviously you don't want to be a little too handsy on the back side of this. You don't want to get too much grease on it or your oils on it. And then it just snaps right onto the heatsink. And the heatsink is designed so that way, and you can, oh, one more thing, you can feel the CPU is pretty tight in there, not too loose and wobbly. The heatsink's designed so it really doesn't matter if it's one way or the other rotated, because it's universal that direction. Anyways, and now we're going to go ahead and remove the CPU socket cover. Go ahead and inspect the CPU and socket cover. You want to look for any bent pins. So usually what I look for is just any kind of irregularity in there. The crappy thing about bent pins is if you put the CPU in and there are any bent pins and it fries the CPU, that usually voids the warranty. So that kind of sucks. So you don't want to do that. So once again, we got the arrows. We're going to match them up with the arrow on the motherboard, which is right there. So we're going to rotate it over and drop it right down. Obviously not quite drop it. And then this one takes a 30 size 30 Torx head nut driver, and then, which for some reason I'm not sure where my nut driver is. Hold on one second. Alright, we're going to get the CPU casing out of the way. We don't need that anymore. And I just use just a screwdriver with, you can replace the tip on. Put the size 30 in there. And then obviously we want to tighten it in the orders shown. 1, 2, 3, 4, as you can see. The corner ones that says don't tighten more than, I want to say, so many inch pounds or foot pounds. Yeah, 12 foot pounds. However, you'll notice when you get your chance to do one is that it just stops. There's no real, I don't know how you'd over tighten unless you really reef the crap out of that sucker. And then these ones, I like to tighten on, I actually move quite a bit on these middle ones. And so I usually start on one side, swap to the other side, and then go back. It does say to do them evenly to not cause problems, so that's kind of what I've done in the past on the other two. That way it definitely drops it down evenly. And it once again just stops. So, I mean, unless you're really reefing on it, I don't know how you're going to get over that 12 inch pounds without doing some serious pressure on that sucker. Now I have several sticks of ram here. I bought the ram in bulk, and so down to the last 4. This CPU does 6 channel memory, but we're only going to use 4 sticks, as the build doesn't require that much RAM. And I went with 32 gig sticks. It also says to use slots B, A, D, and E. This one would be C, and this one would be F for my build. I don't need those because we're not using all 6 sticks for each CPU or for the CPU. And then, just like any other stick of RAM, slide it, open up the slots, slide it down in there, and clip it into place. Pretty standard build design on that part, so nothing real special there. Although I wish I had 32 gig sticks of RAM in my computer. That'd be pretty nice, but I'm not really hosting a bunch of servers either, so I guess I don't have to worry about that either. And then once that's done, that's the CPU and memory. We're done with that part, and now we're gonna rotate this around because I want to get to the back part where the NVMe drive is. We're gonna go ahead and put this back, and obviously I don't need the box of RAM anymore. You'll notice inside these goofy little air shrouds that, I mean, they basically try to lock in on the fins on your heat sinks. One thing I like to do is just make sure that they're down on there pretty well, and then slid back, because you can see, you can kind of see it. They got a little lock or kind of a catch back there. So I just kind of push it back, make sure it's sitting right where I want it, and then obviously the air is going to keep it flowing that direction. And like I said in the beginning, we'll go ahead and replace these. In fact, I'll do that right now. We'll replace these little plastic fillers with the ones that we're actually going to use. Now it has the rubber on the bottom to obviously keep the sound to a minimum, so we're going to go ahead and keep that on the bottom as well. And then this is this last one over here, which is doing nothing except for, it would be pulling air from my hard drives, but they're solid state, so I'm not too worried about having a whole lot of airflow going across those. And this is going to be in a it's in a nicely temperature controlled location, so I don't have to worry about that either. There won't be very much heat there. So we'll replace the blanks there. Now you can go online, you could buy more fans, and it does have enough ports that you could fully populate all those fans as well. At this point, we're going to go ahead and remove this PCI expansion or riser cards, and it comes out, it's a little stiff on the last one, and I expect it to be pretty much the same on this one. mess with that anymore either. So I'll go ahead and remove the 2 screws on the back, which, man, that was a little tight for just a simple screw. And I got one more I got to remove. And then we get to spend some quality time trying to finesse this sucker out of here. Like I said, the last one I did, that one actually came out pretty well. You can see it's got 2 PCI Express by 16s on the one side and 1 by 8 on the other side. Those are physical, not, I don't know that all of them are logically that way. When we put it back in and we use an add-on card, I'm going to put the NIC in this slot, as according to their website, that's the one that's activated when I use a single CPU. So that's what we're going to use. So we'll set that aside. And now we're going to talk about this awesome M2 NVMe slot that they have here in their little setup. Now, normally what most of you are probably used to, the same as I am, is a little standoff like this. That's actually not it, unfortunately. They're going to use this contraption that they got here. And what I found the best way to do it is, because I need to use an M2 that goes to here, and unfortunately the way this is set up, this one turns and pops out, and you can see there's no catch for the bottom of the board, which this one actually is going into the motherboard, and then there's a slot here in the motherboard. And I gotta admit, this was the most frustrating part, because if you look at the directions on the website, it was pretty clear that you needed to use A, B, and C is what they call out. They call out this little white piece as B, this black piece is A, and that last piece that I just pulled out as C, which I'll show you real quick. It just comes apart. If I can pull it apart here real quick. And you'd put that to the end of where your M2 NVMe is, and then that'd be, instead of a screw, you just push that down and that will lock in your NVMe. However, unfortunately, for the size that I need, that really doesn't work. And so here's the NVMe that we're going to use. We're going to use a 970 Pro. Let me just open that up real quick. And I like the Samsungs. I've had really good success with them. Failure rate has been very minimal in my opinion, and the cost, the cost is really, you pay, in my opinion, you pay for what you get. So I really do like these Samsung solid states. And you can see it's just a standard M2 NVMe. This is a 512 gig, which is great in my opinion for a server. I can house some ISOs on it as well as the OS. This one's not normal build for me as far as Windows. The end user likes to have a lot of hands-on, and they're not comfortable with remote server admin tools, and so I go ahead and build it with the full GUI instead of a core OS. And so this allows for me to have that full GUI, some ISOs, and any other just build software that I need for any future VMs. I want to show you basically what I was really frustrated about when I first opened up the first one, and that is this. So actually, in order to install this size of NVMe or M2 card in this slot, the best thing is just take this bracket out, and it's clipped here and it's clipped here, and so I like to just grab it with a pair of needle nose. Fortunately, there's not a whole lot of circuitry going on in the board in that area. I found my pliers, and this is the packet that actually comes inside that box I showed earlier, and very important, this one has the piece that we're going to need. So online it says you need A, B, and C for our size. However, let's see if I can show this anywhere. So we're using the 80 millimeter. Oops, I just covered it with my finger down there. And you slide it over to the 80 millimeter again, which I'm not sure why they did it in that just kind of design, but then we want E. And that's what this little guy is. This is E. And a little blurry. Oh, there we go. Clears up. You can see it's got the hook on the one end, and then it's got the needle on the other end to hold it together. We're just going to slide that together just like that and hold in the NVMe M2 drive. So to get this to work, we got to pull out the old one, and basically you just grab it with a pair of needle nose, squeeze just hard enough to get it to come out, because I tried pulling this out without a pair of needle nose last time and it didn't work out so well. And then this end just kind of pops out as well, just like that. And the frustrating part is everywhere in the book it shows that you got to have something going in here and you got to have something going in that, but that's not really the case. The case is really for the 80 millimeter. You just need this. Slides in there and goes ahead and clips. We're going to pull out the one from, we're going to pull out the M2 drive, and obviously you got to line it up. You can see the way the line up it goes. Push it down, make sure it's all the way. At that point, and you probably heard that, where it just kind of fell into place, and we'll lock it down. And we're good. So that's it. That's all we needed. Now we can go ahead and put back in our expansion slots, or our riser card for expansion slots, and then that will allow us to put in our network card later on. Now you can see that would have been pretty tough to put in your NVMe drive below that expansion slot, so that's why we go ahead and take that apart. When I'm done, I'll go ahead and remove this back dust cover, which obviously isn't going to cover too much dust with the holes in it, but anyways, I'll remove that and put in the NIC. At this point, I am done with the inside, except for I do got to put in the screws on my expansion cover. All right. So as you can see, we got a pretty decent option set up for this single-use server. You do have an AOC slot right here, which you could add a particular card, likely a HBA of some sort. I did see that they had the LSI, was it the 8000? I'm trying to think of which one it is. One that I've used before. They had a couple of them that could go in there, and then a RAID card as well. I'm not going to use that for this build. There's not that heavy a requirement. Restoring from backup is not a big deal in this for this build, so that's not an issue. You can see it's got the onboard. These are SATA and SAS ports, and we're going to go ahead and just use what's on board. The options for expansion are, I mean, not obviously eccentric in this case. You know, 3 expansion cards at best, not including the AOC. But it does have the dual power supply, and they're pretty simple. Just pop right out. You can see they are a Platinum 80 Plus, and they are, I believe, I wanted to say they were rated for 500 watts, but I don't see it. Actually, it says 700 watts right there. If this thing would focus, it doesn't want to for some reason. Interesting. Never had that problem, that it never wanted to focus before. Let's just put that down. There you go. You can see 700 watts is what they're saying. So dual power supply is 700 watts. I I do remember these ones were not designed for GPUs on the website, and I don't really see any way that you'd be able to mount a real GPU in this thing. The autofocus is just not working at all today. So then I'm going to go ahead and put the cover back on. I'm going to go ahead and take off the plastic on the handles. They got plastic on the handles where to grab the rails, or grab it and pull it out of the rails. And once we do that, I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. I'm going to install a server 19. These are just going to take standard edition. They're not, they don't house a whole lot of VMs, so we didn't need any data center edition licensing requirements for this build. And then as you can see, I actually have 3 of these here, so they're all going to be the same. 3 builds. They're going to have 4 2 terabyte drives in each device. And a RAID 10, yes, it is software RAID. Go ahead and chastise me all you want. It is, it's going to work just fine for their needs, and performance-wise is going to be well above what their need is in that as well, even though with the software RAID. That is the build, and hope you like it. Thank you.